All right, welcome in everybody to the Go 24/7 podcast. I am Glen West, your senior writer here at the site. LSU wins one of the ugliest games I think most of us who watched last night have ever seen in Tiger Stadium. They beat Western Kentucky 13-10. We're going to break some of that down, but really, I don't want to focus on the actual nitty gritty of this game. It was ugly. If you watched, you saw the 7 punts, you saw the 2 turnovers, you saw. Um, the fumble that was returned for a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. You saw the interception. You saw 2 turnovers on downs. You saw the offense's inability to, again, not be able to convert uh, scoring drives into 7 points. They had just 1 touchdown drive on the entire night against the Hilltoppers defense that ranked well outside the top 100 in several different statistical categories. It was not a pretty game for the offense in any stretch of the imagination. It was really, really ugly. It just comes back to, again, a performance where, LSU has fallen all too commonly this year, which is where they're just relying on their defense to get them through. And the offense is giving very, very little support. And this was definitely a low point, I think, of the season for LSU in terms of just a complete ineptness on that side of the ball offensively. And so, without kind of diving too deep into the game, I'll give you some of my thoughts basically on what I think last night means for this team going forward. Not this specific team, but the future of LSU football. Just what it continues to highlight in my mind. But before we get into all of that, certainly would ask you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, to please like and subscribe. Give us a couple comments down there as well. Always helps us out as we try to grow this network out. And then if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, please like and subscribe as well. We always appreciate the support in that respect. With all that being said, just again, wanted to just kind of clarify, give some of my thoughts on last night and just kind of the future of the program and what that win last night meant. I mean, it didn't mean anything from a record standpoint or just a good vibe standpoint. I don't think it was a game where if you watched in the fourth quarter, you might have seen some of the student section that was left of the student section. All those guys were taking their shirts off and waving them throughout the fourth quarter, just trying to keep themselves entertained because the product on the field was not very entertaining at all. The defense did what it was supposed to do, held Western Kentucky to just 3 points. They had the opening drive field goal that they allowed defensively, but after that, really shut them down the rest of the game and played really, really well. But this whole game, to me, as it was unfolding, it just kind of felt like that chapter in the book or that scene in a movie or a TV show that you've already seen or a book that you've already read, and you just want to skip past it, right? You just want to skip to the good part. And that's what this game felt like last night. This kind of just felt like a game where LSU didn't come out with a whole ton of energy offensively. They didn't come out with a whole ton of uh, you know uh, intensity on that side of the ball, and you could see it really from the first couple of drives when you're punting after 3 and 5 plays. Just really no rhythm to the offense whatsoever, and you were thinking in this, as the game was going on early in the first second quarter, that they would find a way to kind of get something going, and it just never came. It just never came for this team against an FBS opponent that they really should have dominated. They should have dominated up front. They should have dominated with their skills position players, and they just weren't able to do that. And it just continues to highlight the inefficiencies of this offense. And I think probably for me though, it really highlighted to me what uh, how just whoever the next head coach is, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go further into this podcast. But just whoever this next guy is, like, they have a ton of work to do with this offense. I mean, just rip it down, build it up from scratch kind of work, because this offense has been statistically one of the worst, I think, probably in program history. If you were following on Twitter last night, Wilson Alexander covers LSU football for the Advocate, put out this tweet that essentially compared this offense to some of the worst that they've ever that statistically that LSU's ever had. Since the Division I split in 1978. LSU has not gone an entire season without scoring more than 25 points in one game. Like they have been under 25 or lower. They have been at 25 or lower for every single game this year against an FBS opponent. And uh, when you look at just kind of what and that look ahead to next week against Oklahoma, that certainly seems to be in jeopardy right now, right? When you're talking about those kinds of records and not being able to score points, and that's where this offense has been now for really the entirety of this season. They just have not been able to find any kind of groove, any kind of rhythm, and so whoever this next head coach is, there are very, very, very few players that I think if you're LSU, you're really banging down the door to get back. I mean, I think Trades Green is one. I think Harlem Berry is another. I think you'd like to have a little bit of attrition with this wide receiver room and returners like maybe a Kyle Parker or a Destin Hill or Teron Francis, a young freshman up front on the offensive line. You'd probably be thrilled if you were able to get Carius Kern or Solomon Thomas or Tyree Adams, maybe a couple of these younger offensive linemen back into the fold with whoever's going to be coaching them next year. But this is going to go down to the studs. I mean, this was not a great offense for much of the year. They need to be developed. They need to find someone who can make call plays and make things happen and just find the explosiveness and the and just the consistency with this offense that we've seen in various points of the last 10, 15 years. I mean, you go back to uh, the Leonard Fournette years where it was a dominant rushing offense. You go to of course, most recently the Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels years where they've really leaned heavily into the pass and been a very explosive passing offense. Jaden also, obviously with his legs, was a very explosive two-dimensional player. Even last year with Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, I was having this conversation yesterday with a couple of people, but if you put last year's offense and this year's defense against this year's schedule, how many wins they leave with? I think it's probably still in that 9 to 10 range. Like, I mean, I think that they are able to go on the road and beat Vanderbilt, for example, earlier this year with last year's offense. I think the 4,000 yards passing that Garrett Nussmeier had last year, the 30 touchdowns. They showed some signs last year that they could be an explosive offense, and they just have not done that at any point this season against any creditable opponents. And so that certainly leads us into what the news has been for much of the last week, and why I think a big kind of talking point for me last night after the game was just wanting to skip ahead to the good part, right? I mean, where this was the very mundane chapter of the book where it's just setting up the story or just maybe describing the world, and there's not a whole lot of action or anything like that. It's a very similar kind of tone to what you'd see in a movie as well, or a TV show where there's just not a whole lot going on in a particular scene, and you just want to skip past it, right? You want to get to the good stuff, and the good stuff for LSU is that this week is going to be very chaotic in Oxford with Lane Kiffin and the impending decision that he has to make. We haven't done one of these podcasts since a lot of this news kind of came out, so we'll kind of break it down for you a little bit over what's happened over these last couple of days. Essentially, a meeting was scheduled on Friday for Lane Kiffin to meet with the Ole Miss athletic director Keith Carter. That meeting took place around midday, noonish, after an Ole Miss practice, and they leave that meeting with the decision that a final, commitment on Lane Kiffin's future, a final decision on Lane Kiffin's future will be decided on the Saturday after the Egg Bowl. And for those who don't know, that the Mississippi State and Ole Miss play the annual Egg Bowl every year. It's one of the final games of the season. Big rivalry game, and it's a big game for Ole Miss too, because if you win this game, you get to 11-1. You pretty much solidify your chances at a college football playoff appearance. Kind of cap off one of the greatest regular seasons in your program's history at the same time. So they want to move forward with Kiffin coaching this Egg Bowl. The Egg Bowl is going to be on Friday after Thanksgiving. So we'll see kind of how this story tracks getting to there, right? Because there's several reports out there that Kiffin is still weighing his decision, still not entirely sure what I think he's going to do, but I think behind the scenes, and if you dig a little deeper, LSU, Florida, Ole Miss, all these teams that want him to be a part of their future are preparing deals. They're preparing offers. The LSU offer was reported first by Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, but later some even more clarity from our guys over at CBS Sports with Brandon Marcello and the crew. They basically said that it's a $98 million deal that LSU has on the table that they're putting together to offer Lane Kiffin. That's also going to include, anywhere between 25 and 30 million dollars in committed NIL resources for the roster. And that'll be kind of a yearly annual thing to build the best roster possible if Kiffin were to come here. But also in the hours and days after that news broke, I believe that news broke late on Friday evening about the contract situation and gained some more clarity on Saturday morning. But Ole Miss and Florida are both prepared to make very similar offers, and so Ole Miss I think is around the $13 million range contractually. Same with Florida. I think they are offering very similar NIL incentive deals as well to Kiffin, and so this really will come down to what does Lane Kiffin want in his coaching future? Does he think that he can win a championship at Ole Miss with those kinds of resources? Does he want to stay? Does he want to continue to build off of what he's built in that program for the last 6 years, or does he feel like he has a better chance of winning at a program like Florida or LSU? Those are the questions that he's no doubt asking himself right now. And certainly nationally, there does seem to be a little bit more of a push or a trend towards the LSU side of this coin, right? I mean, I think you've seen several reports, even on our site, on our brother company sites at Rebels 24/7 or Swamp 24/7, the Florida and Ole Miss sites. The Ole Miss site is pretty clear that they think Lane Kiffin will decide to become the next LSU head coach. I think we're hearing a lot of the same things here at Go 24/7 as well. But you have to throw this caveat in here, like nothing is done until it's done. Like we cannot stress this enough. This is obviously a really important decision that's going to be stretched out over these next 5 days. I think coming out of that meeting on Friday, this was the best possible outcome if you were LSU, because if Lane Kiffin was determined to be staying at Ole Miss, they would have just announced he was staying and that the contract had been signed, the extension had been signed, and that he was staying at Ole Miss, and LSU kind of moves forward with the rest of their search. But that didn't happen, and they have decided to prolong this until Saturday, when a final decision will be coming from Kiffin on what his future will hold. We'll see if it gets that far, though. Like, there's just so much noise around this story. He's going to have so many press conferences over the next couple days where so many of the questions are going to be kind of honed in on this decision and what his future is ultimately going to be here for whether it's staying at Ole Miss, staying in Oxford, or going to Baton Rouge or Gainesville. So that's kind of just the latest with Kiffin. The ball is squarely in his court. We kind of talked about this a little bit last week with our podcast, but he's very much right now entrenched in trying to get this Ole Miss team ready for the Egg Bowl, finishing this season off 11-1, solidifying this team's chances at being a college football playoff program. Because the last thing you want if you're Ole Miss is to go lose this game and be 10-2, and then also have your head coach leave you on the very next day. That changes circumstances dramatically for that team. And if you're the college football playoff committee, it certainly could have an effect on what you decide Ole Miss's playoff future or postseason future could look like. So It's important that they win this game on Friday first and foremost. Um, and this distraction over Lane Kiffin is just going to be something they're going to have to overcome as a program and as a team. I just in talking with a bunch of people yesterday at the game, the confidence from LSU side certainly seems to be way up there. We're very confident too, but I think just the public nature of all this being so out in the open in terms of what the contracts look like for really all three of these teams that are going to be in the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes here over the next week. Just some of the reporting and the news that's coming out about what LSU is willing to do to get this over the finish line. This definitely is not how the last cycle was handled. I think from the Brian Kelly perspective, that one came pretty quickly and kind of out of I don't want to say out of nowhere, but certainly wasn't on the radar or right in the front of the radar of people when that search was going on 4 years ago. But this is very much the center of attention right now in college football. You heard it on game day. You heard it on the broadcast last night. If you listened to the LSU Western Kentucky game, I'm sure it was mentioned in the Florida game as well. I can't remember who Florida played. I think they got beaten by Tennessee pretty good last night as well. So this is the big question that I have though, is just does this decision get to Saturday? The week ahead and all the news and all the questions that Lane Kiffin will have to dodge, and that these players on this Ole Miss team will have to kind of just block out all this noise to get ready for this game. It's very much going to be an interesting week in Oxford. It's going to be a tumultuous week, if I had to guess. And but this is I guess I don't want to go too far in saying it's exciting, but it's the part of this coaching search here that if you're an LSU fan, you've been waiting for, you've been ramping up for, and we'll see kind of how all this plays out. If I had to put money on it right now, um, I would probably say that Lane Kiffin is in Baton Rouge, being announced as the next head coach within the next week or two. But things can change rapidly. There's nothing to stop Kiffin from, on Tuesday or Wednesday morning, waking up and saying, you know what, the way these guys are preparing, the way this team is looking, the way that, the way that this thing is tracking, I believe we have a chance to go compete in the playoff, and the only way for me to do that is by signing this extension or staying with this program long term. Then that's what I'll do. Like, there's nothing to stop him from saying any of that right now. There's nothing to stop him from waking up and saying, "Hey, I think Florida's the really a great option for me as well." So, we got to just, I think if you're LSU, you just got to stay on top of it, continue to make your pitches, continue to have your conversations behind the scenes, and just wait on that decision. I mean, you've done the heavy lifting. If you're LSU, if you have this contract in place, if you're ready to make that offer, you've done your part. You've made your big swing, and now it's just on the decision of a man who really seems to be wavering back and forth a little bit. I guess certainly before this last week and leading up to these next several days. While it does seem to be trending towards LSU, CBS Sports has reported that. We certainly have a lot of intel and that leads us to believe that's what's going to be the ultimate outcome here. But things are never done until they're done, and that's the part that we have to continue to stress here. But I think just looking at this from what I listed as the title of this podcast, 2026 can't get here soon enough for LSU. I think that's very true. They have so much. The meaningful football is not next week in Norman against Oklahoma. It's not later this month in December against whatever bowl team that or bowl game that they're playing, or early January of next year. Their next meaningful football is in March, April of next year, when this new 2026 roster gets to take the field under their new head coach. And we could be learning about who that could be and what that process could look like sooner than later. So make sure that you guys are staying tuned with us. We'll have all of the information. We'll have all the breakdowns, all the analysis, all the intel on this coaching search, on Lane Kiffin's decision. Certainly this last week against Oklahoma, it'll be a good opportunity for this team to, maybe be a little bit of a spoiler. We'll see. I don't hold out much hope. I know that after watching last night, probably none of you have much hope either, but you still got to go out there and play the game. And so we'll have all the coverage on Oklahoma. We'll have all the coverage on Lane Kiffin and this decision this week, recruiting. You got the early signing period that's less than 2 weeks away now. So we'll have all that stuff for you guys locked and loaded over at Go 24/7. So with that, thanks for watching and listening to Go 24/7 podcast.